guys, welcome back to another episode of HospitaliTV. Today we're in Point Loma in San Diego with San Diego EATER Chef of the Year, Claudette Zepeda, at her restaurant El Jardín. Super stoked to be here. Very excited to be here with you, Chef. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for wanting me to talk.
Oh my God, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm tired, but I'm good. I always say that. No, I'm great. I'm a little tired, but I'm great.
It's your day off.
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
We just came out of a really cool roundtable discussion too, so thanks for doing it again. Yeah. I want to maybe just take a brief moment, if you could, just give us a quick background story, your background story on how it is that you got here in this industry, for those that don't know.
So there I was. I've been in restaurants my entire life. My aunt had a restaurant in Guadalajara that I basically grew up in. I spent all the summers and breaks going to visit her. And my childhood was just revolved around food and family and loud people is always a thing. And when I had my son, I was 18 years old, so I was very, very young. And I hit one of those moments where I didn't know what I was going to do because I had just graduated high school. I didn't have money for college. I didn't have the grades for college. I graduated high school in a program called Learning Center, which is basically where the bad kids go, because I had a full-time job my junior year in high school. So I looked at my kid and I said, okay, I got to pick something that is going to be, one, provide for him because I was a single mom, and two, is going to show him that he should chase his dreams. And for some reason, one way led me to food. I don't know why, I don't know how. It just very organically happened. I applied to the Art Institute in San Diego, wrote an essay on how my brothers and I learned English watching KPBS. So Julia Child, Food TV, Are You Being Served? Just British comedy has always been my favorite. But long story short, I went first job that got paid at a cafe in Imperial Beach, and then second job was at Pizzeria Uno's as a hostess slash expo slash.
Love Pizzeria Uno.
slash everything. I was 16 and kind of never left. I've done literally every job under the sun. Every job. I've cashed checks. I have worked at the IKEA returns department. I worked at literally Cox Cable for a short stint. Because I've always had to maintain 2 to 3 jobs for the family. So I'd work as a cook and then I'd go work as an office. I was a bookkeeper for 3 years for a nonprofit. I'm like the Jane of all trades, master of none. But I've had a really, really cool career. I feel very fortunate that I've had very good mentors in this career in San Diego. I've never been able to leave and travel and do stages elsewhere. But I found good mentors within San Diego that I went from pastry to savory very easily. Most people don't have that transition as easily as I feel like I did. Maybe it's just because you gotta either be tough or dumb, and I'm not sure. I'm still trying to figure out which one I am. But I think that's led me to this place, and the dreams and everything. El Jardín is a culmination of pretty much my entire career.
Do you have a moment that you remember that an early childhood food moment that really you can look back on? I know it's kind of like a...
When I was a kid, my dad is a very adventurous person. My dad was the one that would always take me on the roller coasters, that would stick his foot underneath my heels so I would meet the height requirement in theme parks. My dad's a lover of life, of flavors, he's bigger than life, my dad. And I very clearly, every time I smell guayabas, it literally is like one of those movements in movies where it's like, and it transports the person to a different time and place. The smell of guayabas and grilled fish reminds me very much of my childhood visiting Nayarit. And that's where my dad was born in. The Zepeda family on my side was Santiago Escuintla, Nayarit. Transports me to that. So I have a very, very big part of my heart is in Guadalajara and Nayarit.
Yeah.
And the food.
Big emotional connection for sure. So, one of the reasons why I'm excited to have you here today too is that you're always a super straight shooter. You tell it how it is. There's no BS involved. I love you for that. But it's real. It's real. Yeah. So I wanna dig into that a little bit and kind of just throw out a couple of, not rapid fire, but just throw out some more direct questions at you and kind of take it from there. So, there's a lot of people out there who are hardworking in restaurants, and they're putting in the blood and tears and hoping to have a restaurant one day, but they've never really even been a part of maybe an opening or much less actually opened a restaurant. What would you tell them that it takes to open a restaurant?
I think it's two things: patience and adaptability. You have to be able to roll with the punches in opening restaurants. If you grind your heels at any point or you start thinking negatively, I am a very firm believer of energy, so I try to always put out good energy, and it has worked out for me where it's like if I say, well, this sucks, this is a failure, and well, I guess I'm not doing it, usually it doesn't happen.
Right.
So I have like that positive, that PMA, positive mental attitude always. And shit's not always perfect, and it's never going to be perfect because we're perfectionists as a fault in this career. But I think that those two things, the patience to know that everything will happen when it's supposed to happen, and the adaptability is if it doesn't, it's okay.
Yeah. So what if you have those two things? Like for somebody who doesn't, doesn't have a big life savings or something, how do you get like investments, or what's even a good way to go about doing that? How do you build those? Is it relationship based? Is it reaching out to a bunch of people and, hey, will you invest in me? Or what have you seen the most successful like approaches on that?
I think it's kind of like how do you get respect from people? People either demand it or earn it. You really do have to put in the work and show why people should invest in you, why you should be given a partnership in a place, and never expect it. I think that's and also like humility is a huge thing. So being hungry and having an ego, they're not one and the same. You have to be hungry and be humble, because that humbleness, people see it, and people with money or that want to put in money towards, a dream of someone that they can see is going to earn it and it's going to work hard for it. Yeah. Those things will align, and again, it's like, don't force it.
Right.
If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. If it's not, it wasn't meant to be.
So on that note, what do you think have been some of your biggest failures so far in your career? Like what? I'm really like looking for like I fucked that one up really bad, and
I think that I don't consider anything that I've ever done as failures, because I've learned from every fucking mistake. I've learned from every bruise on my shin. I've learned from every fall, and I've fallen hard. I think the biggest failure for me was thinking that I had to be a jackass for people to respect me, that I had to be that like tough chef, and I had to be loud and mean, and that's something. But that's what this industry tells women.
But that was the culture too, right? I mean, for the longest time. Yeah. This old school culture of just kind of beating you down to bring you up.
Yes, but in women, it's perceived as being a bitch. Men, wow, look at that great leader. If a girl is like that, what's wrong at home? Are you mad? You mad, bro? That's what we get. Right. And it's like, if I were a dude, I'd get a raise. What a leader. If I'm a girl, she must be, that's that time of the month. And it sucks, but it's the truth. Like, there's just, again, I'm not very good at mincing my words. Yeah. But if I had a dick between my legs, so we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I just learned that it's like, it's not necessary. I don't have to humiliate people. I don't have to haze them of like, oh, you left the tape on the cup, go and do 10 push-ups. Why? What the hell does that prove? Right. All you do is make that person miserable. You're humiliating them in front of their staff, the other peers, and then their peers are making fun of them. They go home and they drink, and it's like you're perpetuating that cycle of assholes. Right. And then when they lead a kitchen, they're gonna think that's okay, and I'm done. Like, I'm done with that. My biggest failure was thinking that I had to do that. Right.
So, that's a super interesting point too, and that's something I wanted to bring up today too. And this is something that's not mentioned a lot of times, because there's all this. This channel, for God's sake, is called HospitaliTV, and we're in the hospitality industry because we like being around people, and we like what we're doing, obviously, or else we'd be doing something else. But one of the biggest challenges, for sure, in this business is dealing with people, whether it be customers, whether it be your employees. I think a lot of times the customers, honestly, can be some of the biggest headaches that come into your door. Yeah. Because the employees that you have in your restaurant are people that you work with, you put in the same sweat side by side, elbow to elbow. Yeah. Like, you guys are going towards the same mission. But you have these people who come in, they can be disrespectful, they can be wild, they can be drunk, they can be rude, they can lack manners. Just a list of 100 different things. What I'm getting at is, I think that what I've seen, that the people that are most successful in this business are people that can manage all of that. I honestly, our executive chef at my restaurant group right now is literally the unofficial head of HR. Somehow he's so good at it that any little random employee problem, they just go to him. And he's very good at mitigating it, or kind of neutralizing the situation, which I think requires an enormous level of emotional intelligence that's hard to kind of develop, right? How have you developed that over the years? I know you were talking a little bit about your kind of family-driven approach to this restaurant, but what do you think has changed for you since the days where you used to maybe be an asshole and yell at people, and you're trying to fix that?
I think a lot has changed. One, my children have a lot to do with it. Being a mom of 2 teenagers, 2 millennials, my kids aren't that much younger than a lot of my staff. If I think about it, I'm like, oh my son, my hostess is 22, my son's 15. That's not a crazy age gap. That's the difference between my brother and myself. So I look at them as like my little brothers and sisters, my kids almost. And they're my biggest teachers. My kids are my biggest teachers. And I know each one of them have a very different personality. My daughter, she learns by beatings. Like, she's not literal, but she likes to get yelled at. She likes to do things wrong and be told, why the fuck are you doing this? She responds to that. My son, I have to sit down, and he's more analytical, and I say, well, listen, this is this and this. This was not okay. And he responds that way. If I start yelling at him, he shuts down.
Right.
And I know if I do that, I'm going to cause a world of pain for him when he's an adult.
Right.
So I have to, it's a different approach. And that's my kind of HR approach. I've talked people out of quitting here multiple times because of one thing or another. Their life is at a certain point, and, we sit down, what's wrong? Talk to me. Like, it's not, if you don't like working here, cool, that's fine. But if this is something that I can help you in, let me help you. Mm-hmm. You're an important asset to us. I want the opening team to be a family, and I want this and this and this. And we've worked around it, and it's been, for me, a huge learning experience. And I learned that from Gavin. And he's kind of that mentor that has always taught me how to be a leader indirectly. I worked with him, and then I still look up to him, how he leads his restaurants. But being able to diffuse situations with people by talking, because as bosses, you get so wrapped up in the paperwork and the admin of like, oh, fuck it, let them leave. Or you could sit down and go, what's wrong? Talk to me.
Right.
What's going on in your life? I've had a staff member that, lost a friend. Pull them off the floor. Let's talk about it. Let's cry together. Let's hug. Go out in the garden. Go weed. Don't take any more tables. Go home. And that has been a huge learning experience, because in other places, they don't have sympathy. You're having a bad day, yeah, join the fucking club. Or you can make them want to come back because they care, that you care about them.
Right.
You're hungry, let me feed you. You didn't make it to family meal, that's cool. We can't do family meal because labor's shitty and, it's dead outside. Fine, I'm going to buy burritos for everyone, and we're going to eat together burritos. And that approach has always been, for me lately, I'm seeing results, but there has to be like that middle ground, right? Or else, like children, they take abuse of it. It's like, give them an inch, take a mile.
Right.
So there's that like tough love. I'm giving you all this, but you better meet me halfway and do your job.
Right. So when they don't, are you pretty quick to let go?
Yeah.
I mean,
No, not to let go, but to call it to their attention.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this isn't fair.
Right.
This isn't fair, and it's disrespectful. You respect me, I respect you. Let's keep this good. And they respond. It's not like, well, it's your fault. No, I feel like there's right now a good balance. I haven't mastered it because I do have I get impatient at some points because they're still like, damn it, I told you already. We've had this conversation. But again, I have to go with, okay, if I want to be the change you see in the world, you have to, you have to do the work.
Right.
And it's not going to happen overnight.
Right. It's a long process for sure. So how do you deal with reviews that you get from customers? I mean, you can talk about both the negatives and the positives, right? Like,
everyone's got an opinion.
Everyone's got an opinion.
Was that line? Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got them, and they all stink. Should make T-shirts.
Yes, you could. We've all got a megaphone now too, right?
Yeah, everyone's got a keyboard at their fingertips, at home. They could do it in their sweats. They could do it even if they've never eaten here.
Yep.
And sometimes I know that's happened. I can see where there's multiple restaurants that have this name, and all of a sudden they're talking about a fajita plate that landed on their table, gave us a 1-star, and I'm like, that's not even us. Like, what the fuck? But honestly, I mean, you don't do Top Chef not liking criticism.
Yeah.
I'm used to it.
Yeah.
I grew up with all boys. Talking shit it's a game, it's an art. It's, that Dave Chappelle, the haters ball. Yeah. I'm a world-class hater, but it comes from a good place. It comes from always wanting to be better. So I will tell you your truth because I want you to tell me mine. And I don't want people to blow steam up my ass. If something's bad, tell me. And that's why I've always really like Troy Johnson's always been really good at, I ask him his honest opinion and he'll give it to you even if you don't ask him to give it to you, you know, but it's helpful. How do you grow if you're not told? If you're always told that you're great and you're always told that you're the perfect human and everything you do is great, you don't grow.
Right.
You just grow a kind of false sense of self.
Yeah.
And I think that another thing, my husband's always very good at being self-aware, and he's like, the last 8 years we've known each other, he's like, self-awareness is something that you need to own and being able to see, you know what, I fucked up. So with criticisms and these critiques that you get on Yelp, on Open Table, on everywhere, I take them and I see patterns. I don't take everyone for all of their weight, because I know that people, like you said, people come into this restaurant with their own bullshit and baggage. They had a shitty day, they come here, guess what they're going to do? The first thing they're going to do is they're dumping it on the server.
Yep. And
now the server has lost that customer and it's set it off the rails. Or you get someone that had, you know, a great experience and was like, this tasted like my grandma's food and this reminded me of this and that, and they're not Mexican. This food is soulful. And so I think that it's like this like weight, this like checks and balances of like, okay, I understand the bad. If there's a pattern, I attack it. But I don't listen to them and take them for everything that they're worth. I've been called extra, I've been called not Mexican, I've been called all sorts of shit.
Do you respond to those?
I personally don't, because I don't have the mental health. Like, my mental health is really important for me. And I don't have the space right now in my spectrum to answer to them, because I will be truthful to them and kind of give them the facts. But they don't also want to read it.
Right.
It'll land on deaf ears. So I again, with that energy, it's like, where do you put your energy? Your energy is currency. Be careful where you spend it. You know, so I think that I rather delegate that to someone else and focus on making us better. And I tell them, tell me if you see a pattern. Tell me if you see salty food in more than 3 on one day. Tell me if you see, you know, cold food, or tell patterns. Right. One-offs, when I have 5 1-stars or 5 5-stars and 1 1-star that same day, that person, I don't pay too much attention to that. Right. Because they came in here not wanting to like us. Yeah. I've had people walk up and then read the menu and leave, and I fucking love it. Right. Please don't, if this isn't your place, I would love for everyone to come with an open mind. But if they from the onset like read it and go, this isn't for me, cool. I love that you know that this isn't going to be for you. Don't make your experience shitty because you don't want to eat here.
Do you have somebody who monitors those reviews? Or okay. Do they respond after the positive ones?
Both, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's important. I think that it's important to acknowledge the people that get what we're trying to do. Yeah. And longevity isn't something that the restaurant industry is known for. So I really want to be here for a long time, and I want to really keep pushing what we're doing. I don't want to in a year have to sell tacos to pay my light bill.
Right. Chef, who's been some of the most inspiring person during your career? Somebody who you've really looked up to or has just been operating at a different level?
I think for me, it's always been Gavin, and I always say, and then sometimes I get embarrassed that he's going to be like, all right, stop talking about me. But I do think what he's been able to do in his trajectory in his career, when I worked for him as a pastry chef, I was his pastry chef, and he was like the wonder kid of San Diego. You know, he was on fire and still in his 20s, and did Bocuse and then left to New York and really like started that path. And how he led the kitchen was like, you know, we didn't have prep cooks. He pushed me to do a different flavor souffle every single night that we were open. And that's incredible. But he always, everything was always felt for me, like looking at him as my boss, effortless. Mm-hmm. He walked in the kitchen and it was always good. I never ever have seen him lose his cool. Not once. Not once yelling, not once disrespectful to his employees. If he's kind of like one of those guys of like, I'd rather tell someone I'm disappointed than I'm angry. Right. And that's now my approach. It's like, you should have done better, man. Like, right. And it's like you would never want to disappoint your parents. Right, right. Unless you hate your parents. It's like carries so much more weight, and people want to make you happy when they see you as a mentor. So you don't have to be shitty to them. Yeah. Because usually the one thing that people need to know about the restaurant industry is it's basically a bunch of broken children. If you start asking people how they grew up, very seldomly do they say, I came from a great family. I came from good stock. It's always like, my parents broke up, or, no, I had a drug problem, or I had a drinking problem. It's it's misfits. I didn't fit in high school. This is only, it's like the military. We're a version of the military, you know, and I love that about it. I love being in a band of misfits because we fly the same freak flag. You know, I have restaurants and friends and places that I can go around the entire country and the world. And I find myself really, really fortunate and love my connections that I've built over the last few years. I can literally go to any city, text a friend, and land in another home of a friend of a friend of a friend and make new friends. So I think Gavin for sure started that, how to be the best boss and how to want more. He told me, whenever you have 5 extra minutes, whenever you have an extra day, knock on a door and ask them if you can work there. Just learn from somebody else. You don't have to work there permanently, but go and learn. They closed the kitchen at El Bizcocho. He went to do a stage at Danielle, and he met Danielle, and that started his career. You know, you never know. Every opportunity, you know, you only miss the ones you don't take, is that quote, right? So I think that he's done more than he knows he's done for me in my career.
So what type of things do you find yourself doing now that you're in that position to inspire other people? Whether you realize it or not, right? It's going to be that one thing that you said or that one thing that you did. You might not even have noticed it, and you might not even have seen somebody watching you notice you, but there's something that they're going to remember, that they're going to look back on and being like, well, I still look back on the way that she worked or the way that she treated that one person. Like, do you find yourself catching yourself like thinking about, being in that position and now that you can be that inspiration to other people?
Yeah, I think in this restaurant, I've also worked for people that are not as connected to the restaurant, that can kind of phone it in a little. I've seen it in events where I see that the chef's employees all, working crazy, and the chef rolls in right before a plate up, and that's cool. That's what you want to do. That's fine. But I know what works for me, and I know what I want to instill in my cooks and the leaders I want them to be one day. And for me, I don't ever want someone to run behind me. I want people to run next to me. I want my GM and I want her to be my left hand. I know that she knows exactly what I want, and if I see that it's not right, she is gonna beat herself up because she knows what my expectations are. Right. My sous chefs are the same. They don't work for me. We work together. And my cooks, I had a cook ask me, well, what do you think the definition of chef is? And I said, it's a word that gets thrown around too lightly. I think that it's a boss that you can run a kitchen and maintain and know your numbers and maintain, a healthy work environment. But I think it's above all like a leader. It's not just a title that you get because you went to school. It's, can you lead and put out a good product consistently under your guidance, and that's something that I still haven't mastered, but I strive for it every single day. I work the line often. I do expo. Last night we got our ass kicked, and I worked the line, and we left at 1:30 in the morning. I stay and clean with the staff. I stay and even if I go, okay, I worked the line, please clean the fucking station because I'm done. But I tell them, I don't make them expect to. Right. Like, oh shit, well, I guess you left a mess. I'll clean up a little and I'll go, can you take care? I don't even have the words, right. But I will say till the end. I'll stay till the end with them. A lot of the things, I scrubbed the deck on the concrete floors outside myself. I don't ever ask them to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Yeah. I think that's my biggest kind of like driving force as a leader. What do I want them to be? Yeah. When they run their own restaurants, I want my sous chefs to own their own restaurant one day. I want them to leave the nest and prove. When somebody asks them who was your mentor, I want them to say me. Not because of my ego, but because I did something good. You
did your job well.
Right.
Yeah. So kind of on a parallel, now that in our current state of affairs today, what does the word influencer mean to you?
Oh God, everyone's an influencer.
The reason I asked, you have a kind of a created sort of a large social media following now too. So you could say in the same way that you're doing this here in your restaurant, where you're doing things so that people can kind of improve on their own tactics here at work. You're essentially also, now you have that many more eyes on you on your social media platforms. How do you leverage that to continue to do that, what you're trying to do here, but via social media?
You know, social media is it's so interesting. I've seen it evolve from the MySpace days to what it is now, and it's insane how much money people can make on those things. And I don't make money on social media. Every once in a while I'll do a branded deal, but I don't. If I post something that I like, it's just because I'm honest. And I think for me, what works for me.
Do you have a lot of people reaching out to you for that?
Sometimes, yeah. It depends on the season. Like Christmas time, we get a little bit more. And if it's an honest to God good product, I will talk about it. But usually people don't want to actually pay monetary. Like it's usually like, we'll give you a blender. I'm like, yeah, we'll use a blender. You know,
Right.
like we need it.
Right.
But just like I am in person, I try to be that in social media. So I'll never ever say not be myself. And I want to show people, like when there was a post when I eat shit out here. I was walking outside and I fell like a fucking tree. And I ripped my pants open. It's like everyone assumes on social media everything is so good. Oh my gosh, she's doing so good. I'm a fucking hot mess most of the time. And I fall and I eat shit and I wake up late, and that's who we really are. People on social media, like I was just in an event in Mexico City, and I had a bunch of students, and they were like gobsmacked when I said hi to a really awesome chef in Mexico. And they're like, oh my God, you know him. These girls were like freaking out like if it was a rock star. And I turned around and I was like, dude, he shits just like all of you. He's not a god. You need to understand, when you say hi to a chef, keep your composure. Hey chef, I love what you're doing. I'm a huge admirer of your career, whatever. I was like, but don't fawn over them. Like, we're mortals, all of us. So I think in social media, my approach is always to be myself. Kind of sometimes unedited. I curse a lot, and that's kind of, I know my audience, so I know when not to curse and when to curse. That's how I touch tables here. I sometimes will get a table of a bunch of young people. I'm like, oh, this shit is like, this is the best shit you'll ever eat. Or I go, oh yes, no, this is my mother's recipe, you know, and I know how to fluctuate with my audience. And I think on social media, it's awesome because it's my social media. I manage it, and I'm always going to be 100% authentic.
Well, you do use it to leverage it. I mean, you're not. I think you did, like, you do a lot of events here, and you know, you did a really awesome event for women, I think a couple of days ago, right? And I think a lot of people see that, and that's good. I mean, as far as like using social media in that aspect, like people can see like kind of where your passion is and where you're staying active, and what your intentions are.
Yeah.
You know, one thing to be said about that too is you know, I think especially now in this industry, it's such a photogenic industry, right? There's all these dishes. I mean, it's essentially art, and these guys are creating like these very artistic pieces of, you know, these culinary pieces that they want to put on Instagram, and I think a lot of people are putting a lot of their things out there to the world. And what would you say to somebody who's like not really getting a lot of traction, or is not getting the followers that they want?
I think
they're not growing as quickly, you know? Like, I mean, is it really true that, you know, if they're putting it out there and they're not getting the following that they think they should, that, well, their product isn't as good enough, and maybe they're getting bummed out about it, and, you know, because they're not getting the feedback that they want?
I don't think...
Do you see that in your chefs, in your young chefs that are, you know, posting a bunch of stuff on Instagram? And do you sense any, like, kind of, like, disappointment when they don't get the following that they think they should be getting? Or?
No, every once in a while they'll say something like, you got, like, 20,000 followers. But to me, like, I love that I have followers that like look up to me, but it's also a huge amount of weight that carries, that people like look up to you. And if I were only to post that, oh, I got my Gucci, I'm jumping into my Porsche, it's a false sense of self, and it's giving them an idea of what it's like, but they don't understand, they don't see what the work that went into it. I'd rather show them, you know, a market in Mexico, a market like where I'm buying food off the floor that this woman harvested, and it's on a blanket. That's what turns me on creatively. What I have is just, you want this jacket? Take the fucking jacket. I don't give a shit about material things, you know? So I think that I always tell my cooks, or when, you know, an employee tells me, you know, oh, well, you know, huge social following base, it doesn't mean nothing. It's not tangible. It means that I have to work twice as hard to make sure that they know who I really am. It means that all of their opinions, they land on my lap, and I have to be very careful of what I do with it, that I don't misconstrue it, because what this restaurant is and who I am, it's one and the same. And if I'm trying to do, you know, Mexico properly, I'm trying to, you know, honor these things that I believe and my social media is not matching that, it's superficial, I wouldn't be authentic, like I wouldn't be me.
Right.
You know, so I always tell them, like, you know, all the followers are great, but do they pay you? Do they feed you? How do they feed you? For me, it feeds me when I get emails going, or, you know, messages going, you know, you inspire me because of this and that, and you give me hope, men and women, you give me hope as, you know, a Latino. You know, I started in Mexico, and I grew up in TJ, and, you know, I grew up eating from rice and beans one day to a very inconsistent household. My dad was very gypsy-like in his ways, and all of a sudden we'd had escargot. The next day we'd have, you know, lengua, rice and beans for the next 2 weeks. And that was kind of my life. I never had a stable household. So I want that to always be the story of, like, you don't have to, you're not a product of your environment. I was told I wasn't going to graduate high school. I showed up with 7 credits, and I said, the fuck, I'm not graduating high school. You know, and that was my determination. I was like, you're imposing what you think a Mexican woman or a Mexican teenager is, and you're telling me that I'm not good enough. Well, fuck that. You know, and that's always been, that's the story of my life.
Yeah.
Someone telling me I'm not good enough and me proving them wrong. But not by, like, force, you know, by me doing the work.
Getting you determined to do something.
Yeah, so social media is great at showing them, like, you're not a product of you are not what your circumstances have been. Mm-hmm. You are the work you put in.
Right.
And social media has been good in that sense. It's also been awful. I mean, Top Chef, the feedback I got from Top Chef US was awful. And 50%, I would say 50%. Half the people that really saw through all the editing and saw through it was great. But some of those messages I got because people hated me were awful. And it really takes a really strong sense of self to be like, okay, I'm not going to swallow that bullet that day, because sometimes the messages get real. And that's what I tell, you know, another thing that I tell on social media, my staff, when they like, oh my God, so many this and that. And I'm like, it's not glitz and glamour. It comes with a lot of also shitty people, mm-hmm. because they're given a platform to give an opinion on someone they don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it can get heavy quickly.
Yeah.
Well, Chef, I want to thank you again for your time today. We'll wrap it up. I know you got things to do. Guys, make sure to check us out on HospitaliTV, YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram, please. We're also live on the iTunes podcast, HospitaliTV. Make sure to follow Claudette and everything she's doing. Chef, where can they find you?
At Claudette Zepeda-Wilkins on Instagram, Claudette Zepeda on Twitter, Chef Claudette Zepeda on Facebook. It's a fucking mess.
And El Jardín Restaurant.
Yes.
Don't forget that one too.
At eljardin.san Diego, or SD.
Well, Chef, congratulations once again on all your accomplishments, and I can't wait to see what happens next.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Peace.